Hello world, Stephanie here from Vermont with today's edition of Soil and Soul here on Sacred Earth Essentials, where I believe the earth is sacred and you are too. So here I am on top of this little hill here in my yard in what I call my sugar bush, which is the name for a grove of maple trees, sugar maples that are used for sugaring in the springtime. And so maple for sugaring, for making maple syrup, they're called acer, saccharum, and maples are one of the most beloved trees, I would say, in this particular climate. It's also the state tree of Vermont, the state tree of New York, I believe Michigan, and at least one other place. More states have this tree as their state tree than any other tree. So in Vermont, the settlers, the immigrants that came here, they learned how to make maple sugar and tap the trees from the indigenous people here, from the Abenaki, and they would boil it in like a small, I'm trying to show you the shape here, carved out bowl, basically boiling it down in that. Maple is obviously used for many other things. You can even eat the leaves, surprisingly enough. And maple syrup is also high in vitamin B12 and is an excellent alternative for sugar, especially if someone is diabetic or pre-diabetic and needs some type of a sweetener. I'm not giving medical advice on that. That's my personal preference. I love to put maple in my coffee in the morning and feel very blessed and thankful for that from these trees, right? One time I was visiting Pennsylvania and asked for maple at the store at a restaurant for my coffee, and the person looked at me like I was nuts. So after living in Vermont for all these years, you come sometimes when you're living in a different culture, you might either not know what other cultures do, or if you spend a lot of time away from that culture, you may forget. So maples also can stand for longevity, love, balance, promises, and as far as the spirit wisdom of the trees go. And they can also be used, there are studies that show that there's potential anti-inflammatory properties in maple as well. And so why do we need maple for the soil? Well, maple is a hardwood, and in this particular climate, and more south of here as well, there's other certain plants that grow beneath this layer of snow we see here. Some at-risk plants like Trillium and Goldenseal and American Ginseng, they need the less acidic soil that the maples and other hardwoods grow on. So without those hardwoods, we would also lose the leaf foliage that adds to the compost and adds to the soil, adding things like phosphorus and nitrogen. We would also lose the soil that those particular plants are able to grow in, and therefore lose those plants. We would lose the delicious maple that we get from the trees in sugaring time. And I know that there are a lot of people who make their living here in Vermont and similar climate regions from sugaring and making maple syrup. And so the climate crisis and losing soil, saving soil, making soil should be of utmost importance and a priority to these folks, even just from the livelihood perspective, let alone loving nature. And these trees also give us that brilliant, uplifting, one-of-a-kind foliage in the fall. So they may not be the same as evergreens, keeping their verdant greenery all year long. But again, just like we have diversity in people, we have diversity in plants. And maple teaches us how to change and how to let go. And maple teaches us how to be sweet and nutritious and balanced, and how to make and keep a promise, a commitment. It also teaches us and helps us to love. And so it also, part of what these lessons are about on the soulful level are about how there are cold times in our life. There are times when we go deep down into our roots, like the maple trees do. All the energy from the spring and the summer and the fall goes down into the roots and lies dormant there, helping keep the tree alive in the winter time until it warms up in Vermont. And with climate crisis, we've been seeing some weird climate around here lately, especially. And some people were even able to get a run-in from their sugar bush during those warmer days we had a week or two ago. And sometimes in our own lives, on our own soul journeys, we find the need to go hibernate deep down in our roots, to do some soul searching in those roots, and to rest, or maybe to even preserve our energy from harsher elements around us, like the winter here, physically speaking. Again, one of the incredible things about the maple trees are that once it gets warm and spring comes again, all that sap will rise up, nourishing the tree and the new brilliant green leaves and the new life that is a promise of spring. And we can apply that to our own selves if we find ourselves in a cold and dark time, where we can utilize that solitude and alone time as time for self-development, nourishing our roots, setting routines and sticking to them, part of that promise, that commitment that we can learn from the maple. And so we find these lessons in nature that can teach us about how to better appreciate those around us and how to take better care of ourselves as well. Not in a selfish way, but in a way that promotes our ability to then care for others. If we're not caring for ourselves, we will not have the fruits to share with others. Oops, or they will not be as delicious and nutritious as they could be, right? So, if you need, it's okay to take that time for self-care and self-compassion, to go down deep into your roots when things get too cold and too harsh above the surface. And sometimes it's also just part of the cycle of life, and that we all have different personalities and quirks. We may have some of the same basic needs, but just like trees, they may all be trees, but they all have their own unique qualities. Alright, folks, so be sweet like the maple, be a blessing, keep your promises and your commitments to self and others as much as possible. Stay balanced, practice tree pose. Maybe I will do a video coming up here soon on tree pose. And breathe. Breathe like how the leaves take in the air and make oxygen for us. We can practice compassion, compassionate breathing, and we can transform the pain of our own selves and the world through that compassionate breath and that compassionate leadership. Thank you for that video earlier from the Mulligan brothers and the Shaolin monks, who serve as a great inspiration and great teachers for me as well. So be like a maple tree, strong, tall, committed to a routine, in sync with nature, balanced and sweet. And know when to let go.